It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we begin our Friday. Gary, the final Friday of January. How are you?
Wow, we're here already, aren't we, huh?
Yeah. I got this email. January specials ending soon. And I was, in my mind, I was responding, well, why would they be ending the January specials so early? Oh, because January's ending.
Yeah. Wow.
All right, there's that.
Well,
Yeah.
we had an interesting day yesterday.
Yeah.
Lots going on. I will say this. I love the focus on I love the focus on what's going on in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Because that seemed to be all over the media yesterday, and it's about time. And we'll get to in a little bit. We'll get to what Governor Abbott said yesterday, and he makes, as we said, he makes all solid points. I will say this. I want to make sure I get to it here. I was reading earlier. Was I reading it to you?
What?
I can't remember now. Oh, yeah. The Andrew McCarthy column. Because this is something that we said to begin with, but both the left and the right were saying this. They were making that the Supreme Court stay was making it sound like that was the final decision on the border in somehow, and it was ordering Texas to do something, and we stated, no, it wasn't.
There is no order for Texas to do anything.
Right. Texas can still, put up the razor wire.
Right.
This was not a final call. There was no explanation. And I'm just happy that, Andrew McCarthy, National Review, said there's a great deal of moronic commentary accusing the state of Texas of defying the Supreme Court. In point of fact, and you and I said this when this first came out, everybody's going, even on the right, they're ruling against. They didn't rule anything.
No.
The Supreme Court did not order Texas to do anything. It vacated an order by the Fifth Circuit that during the pendency of the ongoing lawsuit between the feds and the state, barring federal authorities from cutting wire that Texas had installed in parts of its border with Mexico. That is, the Supreme Court, with no opinion and over the objection of 4 justices, who also did not write any explanation, held that for now, the lower courts may not prevent federal authorities from dismantling barriers. The Supreme Court action did not direct Texas to do anything. The court did not presume to tell Texas that it could not take action to protect its territory and exclude intruders. To have done so would have been unconstitutionally dubious for the reasons Justice Scalia explained nearly a dozen years ago in Arizona versus the United States, in which Governor Greg Abbott had explicitly relied on and which should be read, reread, and memorized. Note, Abbott described the 2012 Scalia opinion as a dissent. It actually concurred in part and dissented in part with the court's multi-layered decision. There is no doubt that the federal and state governments both have immigration and border enforcement authority. How they work out disputes, particularly under circumstances in which no attempt has been made by Congress in statutory law to prevent the lawful defensive measures Texas has taken, is a political question. This is vertical rather than horizontal separation of powers, collision between federal and state authorities rather than presidential and congressional authority, but the dynamic is similar. The law's preference is for the political officials who answer to the people whose lives are deeply affected to work it out.
Bill Mnuchin posted this on X yesterday morning. And then when the Andrew McCarthy piece hit at National Review, he went further into depth into what it says. But Bill Mnuchin was making the case in his post on X yesterday morning that there is no order for the state of Texas. They're not defying anything because there's nothing there by the Supreme Court to defy.
Right.
And everybody was losing their ever-loving mind. One guy said to Bill Melugin something we get every once in a while. Well, where did you get your law degree? Bill Melugin responded, 3rd grade, because I can read. It's very simple. There is no order by SCOTUS for the state of Texas to remove anything.
As he writes here, although I disagree with the High Court's vacating of the Fifth Circuit injunction against the Department of Homeland Security, I think I understand why it was done. Barrett sided with the majority rather than the other 4 conservative justices. Border enforcement is a political duty, not a judicial one. It involves matters of security and diplomacy that are not within the judicial ken. The state government has border enforcement authority, and the federal government has border enforcement authority. The actor whose border enforcement authority is questionable is the court. I assume the court was uncomfortable with federal judges telling the Biden administration how to carry out border enforcement. I assume the justices would be equally reluctant to endorse a court telling Texas how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
In any event, no court has presumed to tell Texas that it may not erect more barriers. Texas can install more razor wire, even if the feds keep cutting it until there is some resolution. The underlying case is on an expedited schedule before the Fifth Circuit. The dispute will play out politically more than legally. The Civil War talk is hyperbole driven by Democrats who grasp that Biden's position is not politically sustainable, especially with Election Day just months away. This is why Biden is desperate to cut a deal with moderate Senate Republicans. When that falls apart, not because of Donald Trump, but because it's a terrible deal for the country, Biden will either have to cave, engage in actual border enforcement, and refrain from interfering in state border enforcement, or seek election as the president who is suing the beleaguered people of Texas on behalf of illegal aliens, having ushered into the country more than 6 million of them, more than the population of 33 states. If we're going to talk about who's defying the law, that's easy. It's Biden, not the state of Texas.
Right.
When it is said that the states must comply with federal law, that means statutory law, not the whims of the executive branch.
Right.
Biden's policy is not federal law. Federal law, which the president refuses to faithfully execute, calls for detention. As I have explained before, Biden's actions are in gross violation of the law.
You know, this is something that you and I have been hitting on, especially when you couple the changing of the criteria for asylum, and then beyond that, the whole detention thing. This is where those 2 critical points in all of this are going to be the key. And this is where that very last paragraph there by Andrew McCarthy gives me more confidence, maybe hope, that this whole Chevron decision could affect this. Because you can't just, as an executive branch, come in and say, that's our interpretation of asylum. That's the key to all of it. Because you're changing law by doing that. And that kind of garbage from executive branches has to end. Obama did it. And they'll push it to the nth degree if they believe they can get away with it, or until the court tells them not to do it.
As he continues to write, this is from the law, any alien subject to the procedures under this clause shall be detained pending a final determination of credible fear of persecution, and if found not to have such fear, until removed. This is the presumptive role. Even aliens who may have a valid fear of persecution claim are supposed to be kept in custody until that claim is adjudicated.
You and I have been talking focusing on this detention thing for a couple of weeks here because this is the key. Because you look at cities like New York City, Chicago, Boston now, even Los Angeles is dealing with it. And the fact of the matter is that detention is the responsibility of the federal government.
They are not to be released into the United States. That is a congressional statute, and there is no plausible claim that it is unconstitutional. Therefore, the president's sworn duty is to execute it faithfully. There are two exceptions. If an alien arrives on land from a foreign territory next to the United States, the Attorney General may return the alien to that territory pending a removal proceeding. This is the section on which Trump relied on the established Remain in Mexico policy, with Mexico's cooperation, required aliens who tried to get in from Mexico to wait there until we could hold their removal hearings, which they were almost certain to lose. This stopped many aliens from making the perilous trip northward in the first place. So it is not only eminently legal exercise of sovereignty, it is a humanitarian policy. Also, number two, the Attorney General may parole otherwise ineligible aliens into the United States, but only on a case-by-case basis for urgent humanitarian reasons or significant public benefit. The next subsection is emphatic that this applies only to individuals, does not include mass parole, which you currently have right now.
Right.
The Attorney General may not parole into the United States an alien who is a refugee unless the Attorney General, remember, the Attorney General, not HHS, determines that compelling reasons in the public interest with respect to that particular alien require that the alien be paroled into the United States rather than be admitted as a refugee. So that's what the law says. Aliens who are apprehended trying to enter our country illegally are supposed to be detained. The only alternatives are a return to the country to await removal hearing to that particular country. For example, Mexico, that would be it because
the adjacent country.
Adjacent country. Or parole based on individual circumstances if supported by compelling U.S. interests. The mass parole authority that Biden has claimed does not exist, as we have said.
And as I have not seen anything where the Biden administration is applying that whole part where the AG, the Attorney General, would have to be involved in every particular case.
Yes, each case would have to be adjudicated that way. And
They're being the Border Patrol agents are being ordered to process them and release them right there, catch and release. That's not the law. Detention is on the federal government. That is the law. And it seemed that everybody was losing the focus on that part of it. I mean, not Andrew McCarthy, but a lot of people in the conversation. And when we put those two together, basically those are the two key elements here. Changing the criteria for asylum by saying this is our interpretation of it. And then just saying we don't have enough room for detention because, well, you don't, because you've created an onslaught of people through changing the criteria for asylum. Well, that's a problem you created, and it's still against the law. You cannot do that. It all starts and ends with asylum.
Well, and the other thing, when you have the administration talk about the fact, well, we called an emergency because there's so many people on the border. Well, that's not compelling U.S. interest.
No, it isn't.
That may be compelling interest for those people who wish to get in, but that's not a compelling interest for the United States.
No, it isn't.
Or a compelling interest for the United States.
Right.
And that's the problem. And so this is where I believe, and you and I have talked about this, that's why I think the Supreme Court looking at the Chevron case does apply to this. Because what they're saying is, well, this is the law. Well, it says we have to do this, but we're saying that it doesn't say we can do what we're doing. It doesn't specifically say Congress or the HHS cannot do this.
We're filling in our own blanks.
We're filling exactly which Chevron decision allows them to do, which is why it's wrong, because Congress makes the law.
Yeah.
And it's very clear here, and they're just jumping in saying, oh, well, we get the authority to do this because we say we do. And they don't. And I think this is where Chevron will, if the Supreme Court, which I believe will probably overturn at least parts of it, may be the hopefully would be the final nail in the coffin for Mayorkas to be to stop breaking the law as he is.
Right. By the way, I've been saying this about raising adolescent males for a long time. If you don't tell them specifically, don't get on the roof and try and float down while holding an umbrella. If you don't tell them that specifically, they'll do it. Well, you never said I couldn't do it. And this is kind of how the liberals are creating law. Well, it doesn't say we can't do this. Well, the fact of the matter is that I do believe that Chevron decision could have a massive impact here, because you don't just get to go fill in the blanks where there is nothing, because you could write law endlessly from the White House administratively, and you can't do that. And I really hope that it is a broad decision, because executive branches need to quit creating law.
866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Just because idling is common doesn't make it smart. Idling a diesel uses about a gallon of fuel per hour, which can cost you about $180 per week at $4.50 per gallon if your truck idles 8 hours a day. Idling easily can cost you a few thousand more in fuel alone per year, not including the added engine maintenance expense that results from excessive idling, harder on your truck's engine than highway driving. In addition to operating costs, many governments impose no idling laws and regulations with fines as high as $25,000. Instead, there are many alternatives: an extra blanket for cold temperatures, window screens for when the weather is warm, bunk heaters, and various auxiliary power unit options abound in this day and age too, many powered just by batteries. Otherwise, diesel and gas gensets burn far less fuel than your truck's engine. Research options to find your fit. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up following the bottom of the hour, we will hear from Greg Abbott, Governor Abbott, who was making the rounds yesterday as he is laying out the legal case. And we said this from the very beginning. They're doing this because they wanted to get to the Supreme Court.
Oh, yeah.
And as we stated, this is different than the Arizona case from a couple of years ago, because this is about what you do on the border.
Yeah.
This is on the border.
Right.
And so it's going to be fascinating to see where this goes, with the Supreme Court or with the courts in general, as it is, will be this is something that will be fast-tracked.
Right.
And so it's going to be fascinating to see where this goes, because we've asked the question, does a state have a right to protect themselves when the federal government on purpose attempts to harm them?
We believe they do.
Yep.
The Bonus Show.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app and listen when and where you want if you can't listen live overnight. All right, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas was on Fox News yesterday explaining to people exactly what he means about the compact in the Constitution between the federal government and state governments when it comes to borders. Here we go.
So it was the states that created the United States, and when the states voted to create the United States and have a constitution, included in that agreement was the compact that the federal government would take care of the states. And Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution speaks to that and says that if the federal government does not take care of the states, then the states are in danger, we can ask the federal government to live up to its obligation. Then the authors of the Constitution knew there would be times when the federal government would not live up to its duty. And so they empowered states in Article 1, Section 10, the right of self-defense. And what Texas is asserting is our Article 1, Section 10 right of self-defense, because the President of the United States is not fulfilling his duty to enforce the laws passed by Congress that deny illegal entry into the United States.
Governor, will you instruct your officers to physically prevent federal officers from accessing that part of the border?
So what Texas is doing is just very simple. And that is because the Biden administration has really, truly abdicated its responsibility to secure the border and enforce the laws. Texas very simply is securing the border. And so we put up the razor wire that you were talking about, Bill, and we put up all these barricades that actually have denied illegal entry. And as you pointed out also on that screen, there are criminals coming across our border. Texas has a right as a state to stop criminals from coming into our state, to make arrests of those criminals. And we have National Guard as well as Texas Department of Public Safety officers who are there to make those arrests and to deny illegal entry. And Joe Biden actually does have an option here. Joe Biden's option is to enforce the laws of the United States and stop this illegal entry.
Doesn't look like they're going to do that. Listen to Corinne Jean-Pierre. This is what she said about you yesterday.
It's unfortunate that there is a governor in Texas, Governor Abbott, who has politicized this issue of what's happening on the border. And it's not making people's lives safer. It's actually making it harder for law enforcement at the border to do their job.
She just said that this morning. How do you respond?
Well, obviously, it's a very uninformed comment on her part. There's really only one person in America not doing their job, and that's the President of the United States, who's not enforcing immigration laws. Also, as she has already been called out, and the president and other Democrats and media, they have cast a false narrative about some people dying on the border that apparently Texas denied Border Patrol access to. That's been completely debunked. The only thing that the spokesperson for Biden can do is to cast aspersions and lies, hoping that people will believe them. Because the truth of the matter is, what Texas is doing is what Americans expect to be done.
There you go.
Yep.
And so this entire thing, as we'd said earlier this week, when it was like the Democrats saying, you need to federalize the National Guard because the state of Texas is not abiding by a Supreme Court decision. We said, that's not the case.
There is no order for Texas.
Yeah, there is no order for Texas. In fact, if they do, now he did not answer specifically the question that he was asked. Mm-hmm. Is the Border Patrol, number one, cutting the actual wire right now, and is the state of Texas preventing them from getting to that? He didn't answer that question specifically.
Right.
I don't know why. It was a pretty clear question to ask, and to answer. But what we know is legally, if the Border Patrol cuts the wire, Texas National Guard can be a foot away putting that wire back up again.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no order that says Texas cannot do that.
Right. Yeah. And if you're I don't know who the sector chief is right now down there in that that part of El Paso or Eagle Pass. But it would essentially be the cooperation between those two. In other words, the local supervisors down there would have to, from the Border Patrol's perspective, would have to determine if that's going to be worth their while. If they're going to cut wire only to have Texas replace it, they could be there all day just cutting a wire and watching Texas replace it. And if they believe, okay, our resources are better spent over here, I don't know if that's the case. But I can't imagine that it's not.
Did you read the Wall Street Journal lead editorial today?
No.
On the border,
Mm-mm.
where they're saying what a opportunity it is for Republicans, to get something done on the border with the negotiations with the Democrats. And I'm reading this article. I go, they don't give any specifics of what's actually in the bill. That's one of the problems. We know initially it was the fact that, and I don't know what the number would be right now, but I remember at that point it was like the one side was saying, okay, you can have, I don't know, 5,000 a day or 8,000 a day or whatever that number is going to end up being,
right,
can just come across the border. And once they come across, then we can close the border. Yeah. Well, you make that a congressional law that becomes permanent, well, then you have insanity at the border. Well, they don't address that. And I know that the Wall Street Journal and the editorial page has been, very much in promotion that we need more legal immigration. But that's a completely different topic than this. Completely.
Well, and I saw the back and forth. I did see the back and forth on social media, the story of Mitt Romney, like anybody cares what he has to say, talking about, Trump not wanting the Republicans in the Senate to do this deal. He's just getting in the way of getting things done. You're not getting anything done in the Senate. The deal in the Senate by the Republicans, first of all, is garbage. Because then I hear this, they're only doing that so they can basically table it and push it over to the House where they know it's going to fail. Don't support something that you on your principles don't support.
Well, don't support something that changes the current congressional law that the administration is not abiding by.
Well, that's the thing. If you had the votes in the House, would you actually be on board for this, or are you just trying to shove it over to the House? That's what they were trying to say. Some were trying to say yesterday, as well. They're just trying to, get it done in the Senate. No. It tells me you don't care. You're laying down once again, and all of those GOPers in the Senate that are supporting this need to be gone.
Absolutely none of this is Trump's fault.
No.
I mean, he's not involved. Well, but Trump is telling everybody that he doesn't want this as a deal, as he should.
Yes.
Because from what we know of the deal, it sucks.
No, it's horrible. We know why he's telling them that.
Right.
We're saying the same thing to them. Well, I just keep hearing Boehner's voice. I mean, I know he was the Speaker of the House and not the Senate, but I hear that, we don't like messy. Trump is making this messy. Shut up and get out.
Yeah, because as we have seen earlier this week, what we were told is the right now there's roughly 9 million people have come in over a certain period of time.
Yeah.
And if this bill passes, 6 million would be allowed in. No. I want the border as closed as it can possibly be.
Right.
And like Trump, I want more legal immigration.
Right.
Now, the public isn't there yet.
Right.
But you're going to have more legal immigration into the country that benefits U.S. interest, which is the economy, because we don't have women like we have over the last 70 years, women coming into the workforce. Where now you have more women in the workforce than men, and that wasn't the case post-World War II. But you had women coming into the workforce in unprecedented numbers, and you had a baby boom that's never going to happen again. And so in order to get 2 to 3% growth, which is probably the average of what we have, you needed an influx of tens of millions of people into the workforce. And the baby boom and women coming into the workforce provided that. We don't have that now.
We have the opposite of a baby boom. We have a very low birth rate.
Well, but one of the reasons that, you saw the GDP numbers yesterday is the consumer spending, and part of that is because consumers are spending because they know they're going to have a job.
Right.
Because there's way more jobs than there are people looking for jobs because we don't have the growth rate. So naturally, if you feel more secure in your job, even if, prices have gone up, you're more likely to spend more if you feel you have a secure situation, even if things are more expensive.
One economist from Wells Fargo, by the way, said, and Business Insider had the story yesterday, that last hurrah, and we kind of said that. Look, during this Christmas season, because you're reaching the end, and they were showing this. The banks knew this. People were maxing out credit cards. And now you've reached that end. And here's the headline on this story from Business Insider. American consumers won't save the economy in 24, and their wild holiday spending spree was a last hurrah.
Well, you think about that because what they said was consumer spending and government spending.
Yeah.
Is the reason that, and government spending to me, it's not, you and I disagree, number one, with, the GDP as viewed as a absolute indicator of the economy, because a lot of it is the transferring of money, or government spending, which is not used for productive purposes, which is profit-making purposes.
Because, and the way that any administration can take that spending and put it off until one period. I mean, they can, during an election season, this is what you want coming into 24. The numbers from, last year. Well, here's what we did here. They've done that before, and it's manipulation. And it's not growth, by the way. Right. You judge spending. Excuse me. You judge the success of an economy, or at least we do, more based on the increase in goods and services. Yes, not just the movement of money. Not just the movement of money or the spending of money, because if you spend a lot of government money, it's not used for a productive profit-making purpose. So wealth creation is what gives the economy and the dollar value. Right. So it's well, here's the other thing too: is the Fed not going to raise rates for a while now, or lower rates for a while? Yeah, because of this. Yeah, I don't know. Will it not come in March? But yeah, all really interesting. And the other thing is that I want to see, because you and I looked at the third quarter, and if you look at it, what was the state that drove so much of the increase in the GDP of the third quarter last year? It's Texas. Mm-hmm. Mind-boggling, the numbers of what was it, 7.7% increase in GDP for the third quarter. Right. Really looking forward, to see what it is, for the fourth quarter when they break it down state by state. Yeah. Yeah. Really that would be interesting. Because part of it, the other thing was the exports of petroleum. And where does that come from? Yeah. By the way, they point out here, the percentage of credit card balances that were at least 30 days late ticked higher to 3.2%, the highest rate of delinquency seen in over 10 years. I got something from my credit card company. It says if you're late on your payment, you may have to pay 29.9%. Wow. And I went, whoa. That came out, and I'm like, okay. I mean, it doesn't apply to me because I pay off my balances. Yeah. But I was like, oh, okay. What is that in response to? Is that in response to higher delinquencies? Likely. Is that high? Likely. Is that because they expect more charge-offs, which we call, basically they can't pay it, and so you charge it off and file a lien suit, whatever, against the individual. But you basically, when you charge it off, you give it up, and when you give that up, when you say, okay, we're not going to be able to recoup that, well, then you got to recoup it somewhere else. Yeah, they'll have to. And we're getting that point. We're getting to that point now. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up following the bottom of the hour, more on the border. I like this one. New York City mayor officially declares social media a public health hazard that is on par with tobacco and guns. That means we have to do that. Federal judge rules against Trudeau's. This is up in. We have some Canadian news, but this relates. Everybody knows about this. Federal judge rules that Trudeau's use of Emergencies Act against COVID lockdown protesters, the truckers, unconstitutional.
Yep.
We'll get to that and more.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, where are we on the ping pong McConnell game here? Is McConnell for the immigration reform bill, or it was the last he was against it? The last I saw, I think he was against it, which means if he's against it, it's not moving through this.
Right.
It's not going to go anywhere. Well, it still may go somewhere because they still may have all they need to do is get all Democrats to vote for it and a couple of Republicans.
Yeah.
So even if McConnell is against it, if McConnell comes out officially against it, which it seems like that's where he is, the last that I saw was going back and forth. Well, no, he's not for that. Yes, he is for it.
It seemed yesterday that he was more against it than for it. And we have to phrase it that way because I'm thinking of what Ted Cruz said during that lunch. He's asking leadership. He didn't say specifically who. And I asked you during a break. All right, does that mean he was asking the other senator from Texas? Because I'd like to know about that. But if he says leadership, I think McConnell.
Yeah.
So.
And Schumer.
Right. Well, but I mean, if he's asking, it's GOP leadership.
Right.
Why would you vote?
No, you're right. You're right.
The point he was making.
He is talking about,
And he says, why would you vote for this when you know it's going to die in the House? It's going nowhere in the House.
But like I said, the majority of the time I agree with the Wall Street Journal. But on their editorial yesterday on the immigration bill, that this is a chance for Republicans, I'm like, what are you talking about?
No, they've done this repeatedly where they lay down and go along with the left.
And then if the bill doesn't pass, that means that then Biden can use that against the Republicans. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's if you sit there and go to the American people and say the Democrats don't want 9 million people coming in over a period of time, they're willing to compromise on 6 million, where the Republicans want to close the border and get back to legal immigration through, that's where people are vetted, and the way it's always been done in this country. You don't lose that argument.
Right.
And so I'm just shaking my head going, what in the world? The Wall Street Journal, that normally comes across very conservative and libertarian, and we know they're pro-legal immigration, but pro-legal immigration, even if you want a lot more pro-legal immigration, well, not pro, if you want a lot more legal immigration, that's a different topic.
No,
completely.
That's a whole different
topic.
Yep.
It's like the guy who called yesterday and said, well, and was angry at us and said, the government is the same as business. It's like, well, no, they're not. Yes, they are. It's like, no, they're
no, they're not.
No, they're not. I mean, they're two separate animals, and legal immigration is a completely different animal than illegal immigration or not following the federal immigration law and allowing millions of people into the country who aren't being vetted for periods of up to almost a decade, where they then disappear, and having a border which has allowed, what are we now, 1.9 million getaways because you have an open border? That's a completely different concept than we close the border and then we as a country decide, right? We as a country decide through our, congressional representatives how we do the legal immigration. Now, you and I know that the majority of Americans really aren't pro-legal immigration right now, but that's because it's all a mess. They don't trust government. Why should they trust government?
Right.
On border issues.
Right.
Why should they? Why should anybody trust the Democrats on the border issue?
Right.
And in some cases, for Republicans that are willing to cross the line and say, oh, okay, but we're okay with 6 million people coming through the country. Let's keep the border open until we don't wish to. That's the one thing that is infuriating to me, and it was infuriating to you. Well, okay, well, let's not allow 9 million in over a period of time. Let's only allow 6 million. But once we get to that, whatever it was, 3,000 or 5,000 a day that come across the open border, then we close it. Well, you've just told the American public you can close the border.
Right.
But aren't willing to do so.
Yeah, this is insanity. And for those in the GOP and the Senate that vote for this, you own it. It won't pass the House. It won't become law, but you own it. Whoever does that in the GOP, we know the Democrats own it. We know that they own everything up until now. And they'd love to get that deal from the done with the help of the GOP. But you vote for it in the Senate, you own everything that's going on right now and then beyond that. Even if because it won't become law, but it doesn't matter. If you vote for it and support it, you wanted that to become the law.
And then the narrative yesterday was, well, Trump's trying to stop this. Trump's trying to stop it. How come Trump's trying? How come? Because it's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with Trump. But if Trump, as the lead, for being the GOP nominee, coming out on policy and saying, no, we need to follow what the law is now and do legal immigration, there is nothing wrong with that position. Right. And we say that because legal immigration, for people that don't know, because we go back to the whole, when Jim Acosta, if everybody remembers, was banned from the White House press room for a while. The conversation was Trump talking about, stop to Acosta, stop saying it's immigration.
Right.
Don't say that I'm against immigration.
Right.
I'm against illegal immigration.
Right.
And he said we need a lot more legal immigration if we're going to have the growth rate. I forgot what he said, whether it was going to be, his goal was 4% or 5%, whatever. Mm-hmm. But if we're going to have that goal, we have to have legal immigration. We don't have the population to do it.
Right.
Now, I haven't heard him reverse that position. And so that's the position he holds. There is nothing wrong with that position. There's nothing wrong with any Republican, whether they're in office currently or not, stating we need to follow the law. And then once we follow the law and the border is under control, then, we still have legal immigration right now. It's not that legal immigration has ended, but because if you stop illegal immigration and do everything you can do to stop it, which we can do, well, then you can discuss whether we should increase legal immigration. But you increase legal immigration for what? The benefit of U.S. interests.
Yep.
That's what you do it for.
And
it's what Canada does.
It needs to be a very narrow set of rules. The criteria are going to have to be very clear. You're going to have to bring people here that are here for those specific jobs that need to be filled to expand that economy.
And that can be done with, if you want to do the visas, or people that come into this country that we have a legal immigration process. So there's two things.
Right.
There's the
Right.
visas, and then there's
long-term
long-term immigration, which you in this country because the population is just not growing. You need a population to grow an economy.
Right.
Just like you need natural resources, you need people. And, we talk about AI and technology. They've been saying that since the 1850s, that technology is going to destroy all the jobs. It's done the opposite. You think about the job growth between the end of World War II, 1946, and now.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, we've seen it with how many industries? Robots are going to kill this. Automation's going to kill this. You need humans.
Or remember, one of the dumbest things that the smartest president ever said is that the problem is, remember, the problem was ATMs. And he's considered, remember, Obama, this man's just so smart. He's an idiot.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how an economy runs. He's as we always said, he's a cocktail socialist.
Right.
He likes
we need fewer ATMs and more tellers in banks because people want to go and drive through a bank or walk into a bank rather than an ATM.
Well, they don't.
No, they don't. That's the part he left out, where the demand is. The demand for different jobs is always going to be there. Innovation is always going to be there. The types of jobs we do as a nation, as a society, are always going to change. This is where we are as a nation, and it will always be where we are because we want that innovation. That innovation is also a key part of the expansion of an economy. It can be innovation in mining, innovation in communications, think the iPhone. All of these things, they expand an economy and ultimately make us even more efficient. Still, the American worker is the number one producer by far on the planet. And it's going, when we finally get back to it, it's going to be great. Expanding an economy is the key to all of it. And we can do that, but it will take humans.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Surviving and thriving as an owner-operator has just as much to do with managing costs as it does with generating revenue. Like the chief financial officer of any company, you have to be concerned about rising costs, especially without increases in revenue. Trying to reduce costs, let alone make sense of them, can be a complicated task. Understanding basic principles of operating costs can save you thousands of dollars a year. A penny saved could be $1,000 earned. Saving just 1 penny per mile over 100,000 miles driven annually will deliver $1,000 to the bottom line at the end of the year. Brought to you by Shell. Synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Harley. So you read the Wall Street Journal editorial, and you're just like me.
Okay.
It's like you're saying, let's call Barry Weiss and Matt Taibbi. Has the Wall Street Journal been hacked, or
is the FBI, some of the bad actors at the FBI upper brass, are they there because it set up shop like they did at Twitter back in the day? Because reading through this, I'm reading it, it's like the editorial board from Axios wrote this piece here, and they missed the biggest thing. They write how the GOP would miss an opportunity to close the asylum loophole by creating a permanent gap, massive gap, to the tune of 6 million people.
Yeah. I mean, it's just you should.
What I don't, and I know they know that.
Well, of course they do.
Why did they choose to ignore that?
It's one of the reasons we're fans of it is they normally do not justify an opinion by giving you half the argument.
Yeah, exactly. There's a reason this is flying back in the face of those GOP senators. There's a reason. And the editorial board at the Wall Street Journal knows this. And now I got to ask, seriously, I think Barry Weiss may be the only one that can find out.
Well, the best thing, I read it first. You hadn't read it when we talked about it earlier.
Right.
And it was like, and I told you, I said, it just, and so all of a sudden he reads it a couple of breaks ago. He goes, who wrote this?
Somebody hacked the account
He's like, this
of
is
the editorial board. This thing. Because you've got to go out of your way to ignore that part of this whole thing.
Right, because I haven't seen anything where anyone has said, because they're keeping the bill hidden from what we know.
Right.
But there's nothing that says the original the original reporting, which was right now we have this many coming into the whatever country a day, and the Democrats wanted 8,000 a day coming in, and the Republicans only wanted 5,000 a day coming in.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was a day.
A day, okay.
A day coming in. And that's when they would close. Remember, that was the whole point.
It still might be a million.
Right. Well, it will be over a period of a year. I mean, over a period of time, because they used the 9 million versus 6 million. I don't know what the time frame was on it. No. Now, why is it so hard to sit there and say, because when you wish to put through legislation, number one, that the American public is in favor of, and what you feel is an easy sell. And an easy sell is, no, we need to follow what federal law is right now and have a legal immigration system and a legal visa program.
Right.
Other than that, if you come in illegally, you don't stay in the country.
Right.
And by the way, that's what the American public wants, and that's an easy sell. And what the Republicans, should be screaming is, that, look, if we want to help Ukraine, let's do it, but don't tie one to the other. Because we said yesterday, you can sit there and say I think you said it in a way that, so the Democrats and a few members of the Republican Senate wish to protect Ukraine's borders and not the United States.
Exactly.
Because you don't protect. If you're going to allow, if the goal is, well, we're only going to let 5,000 people in and then we close the border, you're telling the American public you have the ability to close it, but you're willing to enable what I call the blackmail of the Democratic Party that has more concerns for someone else's border than they do ours.
Yes. Let's open our borders permanently so that we can secure Ukraine's borders.
Now, here's what I might be for. That if they say 5,000 a day, the Republicans should say the 5,000 a day all must go to sanctuary cities in the United States and must be cared for and paid for by sanctuary cities and sanctuary states in this country. Then I might say, okay, Republicans, why don't you offer that one and we'll see how that goes.
Exactly. This is,
I'm kidding, by the way.
Right. This is insane, though, that the editorial board at the Wall Street Journal just ignores that.
I know.
They have an opportunity to close the loophole on asylum by creating permanent law that would allow millions per year.
By the way, to tell you how much, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed that I happened to read it first and I brought it up. And then when you read it and you're looking at me going, well, what is this? Well, I mean, because I was doing that as I was reading it. And then I got to experience you. I go, okay, I guess I was right because Eric is making the exact same points that I was making. What is this? Who wrote this?
I can't remember reading anything from their editorial board, at least in recent years, that had me scratching my head like this.
That was trying to justify a position by not covering the entire, by not completing the sentence.
This is right out of Axios or MSNBC.
Well, they didn't say why it matters.
They didn't even do that.
Why it matters.
Here's why it matters.
By the way, Axios does that all the time. They do a story and they go, why this matters.
Why it's important. Here are the 5 things to know. Here are the takeaways. Here are the... Yeah.
Murder is wrong.
Right.
Why it matters.
Why it matters. Yeah, no, it's insane. Because it makes me feel like then the editorial board at the Wall Street Journal is full-on establishment. And full-on Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
And that's insane.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. I want to play this audio cut that we played yesterday, but I think it lays out everything. It's the Republicans on the border bill, and this was Ted Cruz getting up to speak. And I think it's just important to hear it because you and I believe that he hit both. He hit really the substance of it all, the actual substance of the bill and the political substance also.
Right.
Of it. I will say because you've seen it on social media. It's like, all right, it's time for Texas to secede now. Will Texas secede because of this? No, Texas is not going to secede, even though, that was brought up. But the Babylon Bee has Ted Cruz grows. I call it,
mutton chops.
The mutton chops grows mutton chops in preparation for a civil war, and the picture was just hilarious. Like, oh my God.
It was pretty funny. Pretty funny.
And then you ever see the cartoon where the woman is laying in bed with the man, and she says she always is wondering what he's thinking. You see it on social media, and she goes, I wonder if he's thinking about another woman. And it's always something like that. And the guy's like, it's something sports related. I wonder if my team can score a goal. She always gets it wrong. But it's like it's the woman's in bed. She's got, she looks like in this one, though, like the Statue of Liberty, which represents the United States. And then there's the guy next to it, and she goes, I wonder if he's thinking of leaving. And then the guy's thinking, he goes, okay, razor wire. We can dig pits and put razor wire in there, and we can just keep replacing the razor wire.
Right.
And the guy sitting there, and beneath him, he's laying on a Texas pillow.
Right.
But I mean, that was the hype, and I don't know where that started. The seceding from the United States and a civil war. That's always a great thing to go to, that Texas wants a civil war, because they're not abiding by the Supreme Court ruling, which, again, is, we said, no, they are abiding by the ruling. There is no, because really, let's put it this way, there really wasn't a ruling, as Andrew McCarthy said. They simply said what the lower court did, stating that the Border Patrol can't cut the border wire. They're just saying, no, we're not ordering Texas to do anything, but if they wish to cut it, it's fine. They didn't say that they could cut it and then Texas can't put it up immediately.
Texas has no order at all on this from the Supreme Court.
There is no order at all from the Supreme Court for Texas. But even people on the right were getting that wrong, as if it was a final decision. And you and I said immediately, this is not the final decision.
Right.
This
case has not been heard yet.
Right. And so, but it will be. But here's Ted Cruz on it this is 2 days ago.
Doesn't want to. The Biden border crisis is an absolute humanitarian disaster, and Democrats don't care. Last year, 853 migrants died crossing illegally into this country. Alejandro Mayorkas didn't even know how many had died because he didn't care. When I brought 19 senators down to the border, we saw a man who had drowned floating in the Rio Grande. Democrats don't care. Last year, thousands upon thousands of children were brutalized and sexually assaulted by human traffickers, and Democrats don't care. Last year, thousands of women were sexually assaulted by human traffickers, and Democrats do not give a damn. Last year, more than 100,000 Americans died of drug overdoses from Chinese fentanyl flooding across the southern border, and Democrats do not give a damn. Now, you may say, oh, come on, that's harsh. They care. They care. Somewhere in their hearts, they care about all the people suffering and dying. Baloney. Because if they cared, they would stop it. If you cared about the children being raped at the border, you would say no more. When Joe Biden came in, we had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. He inherited success, and he deliberately broke it. Democrats want these open borders. And this bill, this mysterious bill, that is buried down in the basement of Chuck Schumer's office. All of you have a living as reporters. Ask yourself, why have you not read the text of the bill? There's a reason. As bad as we think the bill is, I promise you it's worse. The people pushing this deal knew, no, if the American people knew what was in it, they would be against it. This supplemental bill is a kamikaze plane in a box canyon with no exit, headed for a train wreck. If you look at this bill, the bill is not designed to fix this problem. By the way, the single greatest national security threat to America, this right here. I think the odds of a major terrorist attack in the United States are higher today than they've been any time since September 11th. You know what? In that spike, how many Hamas terrorists are there? How many Hezbollah terrorists are there? And what are we going to say when they carry out an attack here like October 7th in Israel? This bill is not designed to fix the problem. This bill normalizes 5,000 people a day coming in. 5,000 people a day is over 1.8 million a year. That's called an invasion. By the way, under Joe Biden, we've had 9.6 million. So the great Republican compromise is we're for 2/3 of Joe Biden's open borders. We'll let in 6 million instead of 9 million. This makes utterly no sense. And there's a reason. Republican leadership is like Charlie Brown with Lucy and the football. And over again, they run for the football, and over again, Lucy Schumer pulls it away. And Republican leadership lands on their ass. They entered this negotiation saying, we will only do what Chuck Schumer will agree to. He doesn't want to fix this. He wants it to continue. So negotiating with Chuck Schumer on securing the border is like putting Hannibal Lecter in charge of a Go Vegan ad campaign. He might dine on your liver with a healthy side of fava beans, but it's not going to remotely do what the suggested objective is. Final point. Not only is this bill utterly ineffective in fixing the problem, but it's designed to fail. The chances of this bill passing the House of Representatives, I can quantify it mathematically. The chances of this bill passing the House are 0.000%. It ain't going to pass. At lunch, we had a vigorous discussion at lunch yesterday. I asked leadership, why on earth would you be teeing up a vote with every Democrat and 10 or 12 Republicans that has no chance of passing the House? It's not going to become law, and I get it. Leadership really wants Ukraine funding. But that doesn't happen unless you get a bill that can pass the House. The only purpose of taking this up is giving Democrats political cover to say, gosh, we would have secured the border, but those pesky House Republicans didn't let us. It's a good talking point. It's complete baloney, but it's a good talking point. This bill represents Senate Republican leadership waging war on House Republican leadership. It's not designed to secure the border, and it won't secure the border. And that's why leadership wants it kept in secret. They don't want anyone to see the text of it. Republicans in the Senate ought to have the sense and sanity to say, secure the border, or else we're not going to go along with providing fig leaves to cover up the deliberate failure of Joe Biden and the Democrats. They have caused this crisis.
We can answer anybody's questions. Yes.
I have one for Senator Cruz, actually. It's about Texas. So the Department of Homeland Homeland Security this week sent another letter again demanding access to Shelby Park. Texas is not evacuating, as you know, instead deploying even more razor wire. Do you think this will ultimately lead to a showdown between the federal Border Patrol agents and the National Guard in Texas?
Listen, I'm proud of the great state of Texas. I'm proud of our governor. I'm proud of our state legislature because they're stepping up and defending our state from invasion. Listen, the mayor of a bunch of blue cities, the governors of a bunch of blue states have declared illegal immigration emergencies in their states. That's true in New York. That's true in Boston. That's true in Massachusetts. That's true in Chicago. That's true in L.A. Eric Adams, the liberal Democrat in New York, has said illegal immigration is destroying New York City. That's 110,000 people are destroying New York City. I agree with him. But if 110,000 people are destroying New York City, what the hell do you think 9.6 million people are doing to Texas and the other states on the southern border? And so Texas is stepping up to defend our state. I'm glad we are. But the reason Texas is doing so is because Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer and the Democrats affirmatively want this invasion. By the way, you want to know why negotiating with these guys, why they're doing it in such bad faith? They are today, as you pointed out. Joe Biden is litigating against the state of Texas to try to stop Texas from securing the border. Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. is the greatest friend the Mexican drug cartels have ever had. He is the greatest financial benefactor the Mexican drug cartels have ever had. He is the single largest human trafficker in history. Now, that may sound like hyperbole, but those 9.6 million people, when they come over and turn themselves in, they tell the Border Patrol agents, I want to go to the following city, and they pick a city. And Joe Biden puts them on planes and puts them on buses and sends them to every city in America, and Joe Biden is the last mile of the human trafficking network. So, yes, Biden is fighting ferociously to stop Texas from defending ourselves. He is wrong.
Did you hear, because that was 2 days ago, did you hear any Democrat challenge Cruz on his statements?
Nope. I didn't hear any of those handful of GOP in the Senate challenge him on any of those claims.
Look, this should have been from the very beginning. This is why we said, Mitch McConnell has to go because he's the minority leader. Immediately he should have come out and said, look, we need a secure border. Don't combine the two.
Right.
If we wish to give money to Ukraine, that's an up or down vote on
clean bill.
Clean bill on Ukraine, clean bill on it. What you're trying to do is you're actually telling me we need to secure the sovereignty of Ukraine while destroying the sovereignty of the United States.
Right. We need to open our borders so we can secure Ukraine's borders.
Right. Well, you win that argument every time. Why didn't they start doing that at the beginning, which would have been when? Beginning of December?
Yeah.
Almost 2 months ago?
Yeah.
Why weren't they pounding that? And that's the problem with the Republican leadership. And this has nothing to do, because you heard it yesterday, this has nothing, before we came on the air, actually got from one of our listeners. Well, Trump's just against this just so he can do it and gain victory. No. Trump doesn't want 5,000 a day coming across the border.
Right. Because he knows that if this were to pass, it would mean the GOP owned the broken border from that point on.
From that point on. Yep.
Which means as an incoming president, he would own it because his party did that. And no one can allow this to happen. And those GOP members in the Senate need to be gone.
Well, Romney will be. 866.
There's one.
Yeah, it was 866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Debate Ted Cruz on the message, on the substance of what he said. You can't.
No, you can't.
And what you and I liked about it was not only the substance of it, but how blunt he was. And it's time to say, he said things we've said before, that the Democrats, we started saying that, remember, with COVID and all the restrictions, and said the administration, the Democrats, to quote Ted Cruz, don't give a damn. And we said at that point about COVID because of the situation at the border. We know what was going on at the northern border. You couldn't get across.
Right.
Southern border was like, free for all. Let's just go.
Right.
There was no concern at all. We said they don't give a damn about COVID. Otherwise, they would close the southern border.
Right.
They would do to the southern border what we did to the northern border.
They didn't believe the science.
Yeah, as we've said many times, that's true. They didn't believe the science because they weren't doing what they were telling you to do, as we found out.
Right.
Speaking of that, did you see that Newsom? I'll see if I can find it. He was asked the question yesterday, do you think Joe Biden should do an interview on Fox News? And he said, well, I may never go on Fox News again because of everything. It's like,
because of everything? Because you mean because you landed on your butt?
Yeah, because you got burned. But I just,
you kidding me?
I just thought of that because he's the one that did. He's one of those that didn't believe that had, and that's the interesting thing. I mean, some of the most severe lockdowns were in California, and the governor who approved of many of those and instigated many of those didn't believe the science himself.
Right. And by the way, it was the bogus science at that time. We're not saying we believed the science. We were saying we're very clear about it. They don't believe the science they're trying to sell you, what they call science. And there's proof.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Harley. What was that you were reading me?
Oh, on the millennial thing?
Yeah.
All right, because this is the second story that I've seen that basically had the same theme. Business Insider yesterday. I thought, all right, what's going on here? Because the narrative seems to be changing. Here's the headline from Business Insider. Empty nest baby boomers won't give up their large homes. They won't give them up, Gary. And it's hurting millennials with kids.
Is that how they wrote it?
That's the headline.
Won't give up?
Won't give up their large homes. Empty nesters, starting there. They don't have any kids. Why do they need a large home? Because I like it. I like it a lot. In fact, I'm thinking about buying a bunch of empty homes and not even living there. How's that feel? And I can pay cash.
You're mean. That's mean of you. You're a meanie.
And the second part, it's hurting millennials with kids. Well, having kids didn't just happen to you. There's scientific proof of how that whole thing works and why you have children.
Well, it's that stork thing.
Yep. Everybody knows that.
They're flying through the air randomly and dropping the baby to you.
Right.
So it is random.
Yeah, right. You're a victim. The stork just landed on your roof.
You're a victim of the stork.
Exactly. In 2022, baby boomers own twice as many large homes as millennials with kids, Redfin reported. How dare they? How dare these baby
but that's
boomers?
A duh. People that have, boomers, what's a boomer now? 60 or over, 64 or over, something like that?
They now folded me into it.
Oh, really?
If you're 57, 58 and older, up until, I guess, 75, 80, whatever. For this purpose, they folded 58 and older.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Well, the generations often refer to find of people born 46 to 64.
Yeah. I'm not a boomer,
Okay.
but they're folding them in
All right.
for this group,
Okay.
this age group.
I am a boomer.
Yeah. But you're not an empty nester because you never had a nest. Well, you had a nest.
No, I had a nest.
You didn't have any chicks. Oh, wait. Sorry.
Let's
That's a totally different.
let's define. Let's
Baby
define
birds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Let's define the whole.
Well,
the whole
actually,
word
it applies to
chicks.
both.
Yeah, right, exactly.
No matter your definition. So they write here. They write here at Business Insider, baby boomers whose kids don't live with them anymore are clinging to their large homes.
They said clinging?
Yeah. Clinging to their large homes, making things worse for millennial families looking to settle down.
So they're clinging to their houses, their
God, their
and their guns.
Actually, yeah. I mean, not necessarily in that order, but yeah. I am. In 2022, empty nest boomers owned 28% of homes in the U.S. with 3 or more bedrooms. I have 5, by the way, and 3 full bathrooms. You're welcome.
I have
Double.
three bedrooms.
Yeah.
And
double the 14% that millennials with kids owned. How dare they? Redfin's analysis of Census Bureau data found this to be the case, and there's no city in the country where millennial families owned a larger share of big homes than boomers did.
But boomers are going to, the older you are,
this is the way
more
it works.
wealth you've acquired, you're
Yeah.
more likely to own a home. I didn't own a home till I was 51.
Now the demographics have changed on buying and selling previously owned homes, existing homes. That demographic, in terms of the median age, has grown older. But in terms of having a house with
But it
3
would-
bedrooms, 2 baths,
But it would grow older based on that the baby boomers became such a huge part of it, because that we talk about the baby
yes,
boomers
and the birth rate dropping.
the birth rate dropping. So it would be logical. I mean but they make it sound like you're doing something immoral.
Well, no, that's exactly what this entire thing implies to me. It's just more evidence of the massive advantage boomers have over millennials in the housing market as prices have soared, mortgage rates remain high, and a shortage of homes persists.
Well, that's like saying that, because I'm the boomer, so I'll say it, even though they included you as a boomer for the article, but technically you're not a boomer, but I'm a boomer. That's like saying that people my age they've got more wealth than the millennials.
No, that's where I was going next.
But
They've got retirements that are way up here.
Right.
They built these, and millennials have 0.
Well, that's because time and work.
Yeah.
That's why it's not. And so they make it sound like there's something immoral going on here. How dare they're clinging as if you have an obligation to. I mean, this is the first time I've heard this kind of virtue signaling, that your kids leave, you're supposed to sell your home. Now, a lot of people do sell their home and move into something smaller as they get older.
Right.
But a lot of people, that's your home.
Right.
A home is a home. That's your home. Kids visit, grandkids visit. You may not have anybody permanently there, but you like having that particular home. I just like the way that they make it seem like you're doing something that is wrong.
Well, now let's
you're hoarding. You're hoarding the home.
And
Boomers,
you don't need all that room. You don't need all that room. Well, technically, I don't need 1 bedroom. Technically, I can sleep in my truck. I've lived in my car before. I know how to do it. Long before it was a thing on YouTube, by the way. Have you seen that?
Yes.
With this one $60 gadget, I actually saw this. They use the word gadget. This $160 gadget from Walmart helps me live in my car in the winter. It was an electric blanket. That's not a gadget, you morons.
Yeah, I've loved following, especially since COVID, and on YouTube, the van life people.
Yeah,
and there's this one woman that I follow sold her van and moved into basically a small SUV from the van
downsizing
to an SUV.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, wow. And
so now we'll get political on this. Most states also have a property tax system that incentivizes homeowners to hang on to their property for as long as possible. Many have fixed property taxes. Actually, in Texas, once you reach that magic age, it starts shrinking. Thank you. God bless Texas. That don't increase as their value of their home rises. How dare they? Baby boomers, and here's a quote, Daryl Fairweather, Redfin's chief economist. Baby boomers are a very large demographic, and they vote more than millennials do. Well, whose fault is that? That political landscape has allowed for there to be a lot of laws passed that benefit baby boomers who own homes. You're damn right. So things like property taxes, carve-outs or exemptions for seniors, those are voted for by seniors who benefit from those laws. Uh-huh. And?
Well, let's put it this way. One of the things about property taxes, for example, the state of Texas, this is something that we've both talked about, and I remember it's one of the first topics that I brought up when I became a talk show host. This goes back to '89. Is just how bad a property tax is, because none of it is dependent on your income.
Right.
It's dependent on something that you built over a period of decades upon decades to own a home, and then when you're on a fixed income, property tax. And before they did property tax reform in Texas, my property taxes had gone up over a period of about 15 years, probably about 20%. Over that, maybe 15 to 20%. So it didn't stay steady. Now, we had property tax reform, and I'm back to where I originally was with my property taxes, because in Texas they have said, okay, seniors, you end up paying less. But that's not because seniors are a huge voting bloc. It is the morality of a tax system that taxes people, and should you be increasing taxes on property for people on fixed incomes? It's about people that have retired, but it's not something that the houses. It's not like the Wizard of Oz where the house falls upon you, and there it is. You work for that over a period of decades in order to own that home.
Well, and to have full equity in that home, there's the thing, is that it typically takes time.
Yeah,
it's going to take 15 to 30 years, maybe longer. And, well, guess what? You're going to go from being 35 when you buy it to 65 when you own it on a 30-year mortgage. So there you have it. Here's the next step in this article. Again, Business Insider. And it's a subheadline, a misallocation of housing. A misallocation of housing. Allocation? Houses aren't allocated. These aren't government houses. Not all boomers living in large homes are the same. More affluent older homeowners, their expert said, can afford to downsize but have no financial incentive to, while lower income homeowners often can't find affordable options in their communities. Well, their affordable option wouldn't be from one of those more affluent. That's not going to fall in that category. And even if it did, you're implying that those that need that house, that can fill that space in that house, have the right to that house. And that's a load of garbage. Most of the smaller units are new construction, and they're more expensive. So those are the ones that, from a policy perspective, I worry about more because they would like to move, and it could be better for them, but it's just going to be difficult to do that. Why are you worried about it? People make choices. Sometimes people go through their life and make a series of bad decisions. You either make up for those bad decisions and correct them, or you don't. But this garbage here, and it's a heaping, steaming pile. I'm going to have to turn my phone off and restart it. I'm afraid it's going to burst into flames. And this garbage from these experts in this piece from Business Insider, again, imply this, when you say that, misallocation of houses, it's to imply that you don't have property rights.
Right, that like, housing is something that is allocated to you by the government or should be allocated to you by the government.
This isn't government housing. And what kind of real estate expert are you? Did you just get in it so that you could, I don't know, change it fundamentally and go back to those liberals in San Francisco that were screaming, nobody has a right? Remember during the whole eviction moratorium thing? Nobody has a right to the place where I live. Yeah, the owner does.
Yeah.
You know, the person that paid for it.
Yeah.
And this implication here is basically to say that the older people are taking up too much room.
Well, we're fatter. We've had time to grow our wealth and our girth.
You know, sometimes my wife and I are looking at the house going, you know, eventually maybe we downsize. And then the next day, I'm looking at construction plans to actually expand my home.
Yeah, you go through that, yeah.
And it's my property.
Yeah, it was interesting because when I was 51, it was actually my buddy Jeff who said, you're building a house, you're 51, build a house for your retirement. This is your retirement house.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, okay. He goes, so build it that way, which he told me, he said, don't build 2 stories.
Yeah.
He said, don't do that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
And he said, one story home. He said, and I followed that advice. And, like I said, I have 3 bedrooms. And when I built my house, one of the reasons I built it was, number one, I was doing this. Number one, I wanted a house. Mm-hmm. But number 2, I was doing this show, and you had to be able to sleep. Mm-hmm. And the one thing, even though I had a real nice townhouse, you could hear noise all the time. Mm-hmm. You could hear all the time. And then I remember I talked about it on the air. I had neighbors that were fighting.
Yeah.
I couldn't get to sleep. I was trying to get to sleep at 5, 6 o'clock. They're home screaming at each other. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing. A friend of mine once said, it's not a good investment to buy a home. And I go, what do you mean? It's a wonderful investment to buy a home. Mm-hmm. It's an incredible investment. The investment isn't just monetary, and it's also about the quality of life, the quiet. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's the biggest thing. But I did think maybe I could. I was looking at a couple of years ago other lots near me that the scenery was better and everything else, and I went, something. If I build it where the scenery's better, there's more rodents, there's more snakes, there's more everything I like. I like where I live.
When my sister and her husband built their ranch, I mean, she told me for months, probably 6 or 8 months, there were scorpions all over the house.
Oh.
Yeah, brand new house.
I've never seen a scorpion.
Oh, man.
Since I've lived in Texas.
Yeah, I'll have to take you around. Show you around.
I've seen a tarantula.
Yeah, and I've seen lots of those, too.
Big one that would, when I used to play basketball, it would sit right at the shaded part of the court where the concrete met the asphalt met the grass.
Right.
It just stayed right in there. It was huge.
Yeah.
866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up, we'll tell you about the federal judge in Canada. So, a federal Canadian judge, not a federal American judge, but a federal Canadian judge rules that Justin Trudeau's use of the Emergencies Act against the COVID lockdown protesters, the truckers, was unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, okay. We just thought it was, the totalitarian move.
It's the way Canadians do things.
That's the totalitarian move up there that so many people in Canada are for, except Alberta.
Exactly.
I know. I know we got Canadians listening going, I don't live in Alberta, and I'm against where it's going to. We know. I'm just having fun.
No, I would say you need to move to Alberta then.
That's the Texas of Canada.
Exactly. But I look, from start to finish, that whole thing, the way they handled that thing with the trucker protesters, and that thing just blew up in their face.
Also, tell you about the California bill that would require, we had touched on this yesterday, but we got so busy on other topics, but the California bill that would require new cars to come equipped with speed limiting devices in California, that would be.
The Bonus Show.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. One of the things we talked about is when they had the congressional hearing last fall about the new regulation that would require monitoring systems in vehicles that would stop intoxicated drivers and distracted drivers in all new vehicles as early as 2026. And this was in the infrastructure bill. And the incredible thing is nobody read it. People didn't know it. Not it was picked up in the media when it was passed. I just went back and looked at it.
Right.
But when they held the hearing, it was like so many members of Congress had which means they didn't read the bill. They had no idea it was in the bill.
Yeah.
That it would do that. And so there's a big controversy, and Republicans wanted to overturn it and say, look, we need to know what this is about before you roll this out in 2026. What kind of monitoring systems? Well, we don't know what it's going to be yet. Well, you mandated something that you don't know what it's going to be. And it's like, is it going to be is it going to be a detector of alcohol? Will you have to blow into something? Will it just be in the steering wheel itself where you don't blow into something, but it just picks it up? But if it picks you up, will it pick up a passenger? Also about distracted driving, you may have cameras that are looking at people, looking at your eye and scanning your eyes. And I've already said, if they do this, if I know by 2025 they do this, well, then I'm probably getting the last vehicle I'll ever have. I may not drive it much.
Yeah.
But
right before the deadline, right?
Right before the deadline.
Yeah.
And it's not because I plan on breaking the law. I remember when
I do.
I remember when, a lot of people probably don't remember it because I'm older. But when I was working, this is the late 70s as a club DJ. And I've talked about this before, that I actually worked for Harvey Weinstein's club in Buffalo, New York. People may not know it, but Harvey Weinstein was a partner in a rock promotion company.
Right. And the name of the club was Touchy Feely, something like that? No? No?
No.
Okay.
It was called Stage One. And it was a small club, fit about 400 people. And then they also, I believe, owned a place called the Century Theater that was probably like 2,000 people. But then they booked the big auditorium. They booked shows all the time. And they did it because Harvey Weinstein I believe he went to the University of Buffalo for college. And then he met Corky, I can't remember his last name, and they had a rock promotion place called Harvey and Corky's. And so I worked for Harvey and Corky's Stage 1. And so I actually went there just to help out a friend. A friend of mine was working there 7 days a week. And I was working at the time. I had been in radio for a short time, then got out, and I was working in machines.
Yeah.
I was a machinist.
Right.
But he knew, because I went to college with him, he knew that I'd been a club DJ.
Yeah.
And he knew my vast 2-week disco club experiences I've talked about before. And he just said, hey, he goes, you just spin tunes between the bands. I go, all right. So I went there, and yes, it was still records at the time. And they didn't have anything.
Right.
So I just was doing him a favor, and I'm like, it's pretty cool. I can go out and, I can do club DJ again and do it in a place that, brings in a ton of different rock bands, and I spin tunes in between it, and then when they're over, and spin it for a couple more hours. That'll be fun. And I told you before, that's where I saw, I don't know why, but I got stuck working a ton of nights when Tallis used to play there with the great bassist Billy Sheehan used to play all. So I've probably seen him play, I don't know, 150 times.
Yeah.
I was not a huge fan of Tallis, though. But he's a great bass player, and we know he I think it's on tour now. What is it? Winery Dogs and Mr. Big
final tour. Yeah.
Oh, is it Mr. Big that he's with? Right. Okay. He's doing.
Yeah. I mean, Winery Dogs may be doing some shows too, but
and he played with David Lee Roth when David Lee Roth broke from Van Halen.
Yeah.
And all that, and I started buying my records and bringing them in because they didn't have enough.
Right.
And I'll never forget. And I was just working there part-time. I worked there because he was working there, the late Tom Conley. Just, man, he was a club DJ all over the place. But he was working 7 days a week. He said, I just need a couple days off. Do you want to do it on weekends or when you're not working? I went, sure. Great. I'm in my 20s and still keep my hand in it, be a club DJ, meet chicks. And not the kind in a nest. And so I probably had 50 record albums in there. Just so it was modern, because they weren't supplying it.
Right.
So I wasn't making a lot of money. I was more doing it for the fun of it. Well, they came in New York at the time, put in where in a job interview, they can give you a lie detector test.
Oh,
and if you don't pass a lie detector test, the United States finally made that unconstitutional. But before they did it, there was a lie detector test. And even though I was employed there, they said when they had a meeting one time and they said, look, everybody, just so you know, in the next 90 days, everybody has to take a lie detector test or you're gone. Every employee has to take it. And I said, well, I'm putting in my 90-day notice. I'll never forget some of the servers and everything else were like, why? What did you do wrong? I go, nothing. I just not going to do that. And it's the same thing there with the car. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to have cameras looking at me. I don't want that technology. I just don't want to do it. There's not really it's not a conspiracy theory thing. It's just like, no, I don't want to do it. It could be inconvenient. If they got cameras on your eyes, and I don't know, I don't think it's going to be a perfected system, and I just don't want to deal with it. I don't plan on doing anything irresponsible. And when I didn't want to take a lie detector test, I had nothing to hide. And as I said, I'm not stealing from this company. I'm actually giving them more than I'm getting. Because half the records that we play are mine.
Right.
They're not even the place. And so I left, and so that's really for me. It's just, no, don't want to do it. But now California, not only is that happening, now California, a California Democrat introduced a bill, this from David Zimmerman, National Review, a California Democrat introduced a bill this week that will require automakers in the state to equip new vehicles with speed governors. Oh, remember when the whole thing of governors in trucks, and we said...
Yeah, still going on, yeah.
And we said, someday they're going to do it for vehicles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And this goes back over a decade ago.
Right.
Here we go. These are devices that restrict how fast people can drive. The technology, if passed under the legislation, would prevent California drivers from going 10 miles an hour or more over the posted speed limit in any given area. The bill would mandate that cars and trucks of the 2027 model year or later that are manufactured or sold in California be installed with speed governors. I guarantee this is going to pass.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, maybe I shouldn't say guarantee. I'm relatively sure this will pass.
There's a really good chance it's going to.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe guarantee is the wrong word. The state senator, Scott Wiener, a Democrat who represents San Francisco, introduced the bill on Wednesday to reduce the number of traffic deaths in the Bay Area and in California. Mm-hmm. We have speed limits, and they exist for a reason, and it's perfectly reasonable to say you can't travel more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit. I'll tell you an immediate problem I see with this already, because I've got that technology that reads the speed limit signs.
Mm-hmm.
You ever take a service road next to a highway, and
it's reading the highway sign.
It's reading the highway sign. It reads the wrong sign all the time.
You ever go through a construction zone where they have temporarily lowered the speed limit?
Yep.
Yet your navigation doesn't catch up with that?
Yep.
And if you look at the navigation screen, it says 75. Oh, nope, you're in a construction zone. It's down to 55. And those are the problems where you're counting on that technology to be perfect and basically monitor and change the ability of the car on the fly. Not a chance I'll ever buy one of those cars.
No.
I would buy an electric car long before I bought one of those.
Well, by that time, there might be a huge choice for you to choose from.
Exactly. $10, just $10. What do you got in your pocket? But those are but that's right up the, that's right there in the playbook of the Democrats and California.
No.
And by the way, it would eventually, if they were to pass this, if it does happen, then eventually it will be, well, if you spend this much time in California, your car's going to have to be equipped with this. You ever see the etchings on the cars that you buy outside of Texas, and it says on the window the etching CARB compliant emissions. CARB is California Air Resources Board.
Yeah.
Well, you're in Texas buying that car. Doesn't matter. The OEMs have to change what they're doing on the technology. And when they're doing that, then all of a sudden you start seeing, and of course more states will join in. Well, 10 miles an hour above the speed limit. Why are they doing that? Why aren't they doing, and by the way, why the speed limit? Why not 15 miles per hour?
Remember they're doing that in parts of Great Britain.
Yeah. Why not
20 miles an hour is what they.
Why not 10?
Right. They went 20 in order to
coasting only
save lives. And by the way, these are things that you and I talked about a long time ago, saying, well, if you want to cut back on the deaths, simply lower the speed limit to 20 miles an hour. And they're doing it in parts of Great Britain.
Why are we allowing people to drive cars?
Well, listen to this. Emergency vehicles, including ambulances and fire trucks, would be exempt from the speed governor requirement. The California Highway Patrol, while not exempt, could obtain authorization from its commissioner to disable speed governors on their vehicles in certain circumstances, according to the bill. You know why? Because they're probably in California going to say, look, it's not fair for the police not to have governors when the public does.
Right.
Because, you never know. These cops are all racist, and they shouldn't have an advantage to be able to overtake the average citizen out there.
High-speed chases are dangerous.
Yeah, you're right.
There's no need for them to rush to the scene of a crime. They'll get there when they get there safely without hurting anyone else. Blah, 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 blah. Good luck, California. Good luck. There's no way in the world I would ever own one of those cars, ever.
Yeah, that's me too. It's like, okay, just
not going to happen.
I told it to the woman who sold me my last car, and I said, she goes, when are you going to buy a new one? I said, maybe by 2026. She goes, why? She said, because they plan on doing all of this. And I went, by the way, you could use that to sell more vehicles in 2025 if they do this.
You could really ramp up sales.
She goes, I really could. She goes, thank you so much. I didn't know that. We'll talk about that in our next meeting.
Use that money that you make during that year for your retirement.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So you can buy a bigger house.
Or go into used car sales. Yeah. I mean, because that's the word. Do this. By the way, even in California, you're going to have people pushing back. You may try and enact this law, and it may be flying right back in the face of these lawmakers.
Oh, no, this is California. The citizens of California will be asking that the speed limiters make it so you can't go. You must go 10 miles an hour below the speed limit.
Well, now in Los Angeles,
they'll say, please regulate us.
In Los Angeles, though, nobody will care. Because if you're going to be stuck in traffic at 2 miles an hour anyway, who cares that your car can't go over 30?
By the way, the exception to what I said there would be Orange County, Kern County, and many places around San Diego.
Yes, that are going to quickly become legally part of Texas.
Yes. 866-90-RED-I.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-I.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. As we talk about automobiles, I'm reading this from Market Watch. Opinion evidence EVs are a fading fad is rolling in fast as Tesla, GM, and Ford slash prices. You heard that, Elon Musk is saying we got to put tariffs on the Chinese products coming into the country because we can't compete, against them. And at the same time that Biden is ensuring that Americans taxpayer subsidies can go to EV development in China.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just and then as you've got the head of the UAW, Sean Fain, saying we fully support Biden because he's for the working man.
Right. The working man of China, maybe.
Unbelievable.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Harley. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
We did play a shorter clip of this audio yesterday with Neil Cavuto and Sean Fain, head of the UAW, but we were just talking about electric vehicles and everything else and regulation of vehicles that is coming up. We talked about the California bill that wants to put speed limiters on, and we've talked about the automobile industry in general. And you and I, when we played this yesterday, just found it unbelievable that the UAW president was saying that a great majority of our members will not vote for President Biden as he officially endorses President Biden.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in our pre-show meeting earlier, you and I we played a longer cut on it and just looked at each other and went, where the hell is Sean Fain going on
He's
this?
trying to have it both ways.
He's trying to have it both ways. I mean, this is so incredibly weak, and we have stated for the longest time. Ted Cruz was blunt. Ted Cruz was blunt on where we're going with the border. The Democrats don't care. We've been very blunt going after union leadership for the longest time and saying union leadership is not putting the best interests of their union members at the forefront. They're playing politics, and that's what he's doing. That's what Sean Fain is doing here, and we've been very blunt. I know I've been very blunt before and just said he doesn't give a damn about the workers out there, to the point where a couple months ago when we talked about it, somebody who in the union who's a friend apparently of Sean Fain, at least that's what he said, called the show and was just livid. Yeah. And we went point by point by point. He goes, well, you still don't understand. We didn't understand anything, but he couldn't explain to us what we didn't understand.
Right.
But this basically, Sean Fain makes the point that we made a couple of months ago with the guy who claimed he was a friend of UAW member and a friend of Sean Fain's. But let's play this here. Neil Cavuto yesterday. We'll play the more extended audio cut. Here we go.
There's always a dichotomy. I mean, the union membership in the past was very strong for Ronald Reagan in both elections. George Bush Sr. benefited from the union vote. Many of your own members now, Sean, are very big Trump supporters. I don't know the breakdown. You know that part better than I. But that a good many of them are at Trump rallies and are MAGA enthusiasts. How do you feel about that?
Look, it's what makes this country, a beacon for other countries. It's democracy in action. Look, let me be clear about this. A great majority of our members will not vote for President Biden. Yes, some will. But that's the reality of this. The majority of our members are going to vote their paychecks. They're going to vote for an economy that works for them, and they're going to vote for a president. When you look at these two presidents, the choice is very clear about which one stands up with the working class and stands up for labor, and which one stands for the billionaire class, and that's his base.
So what he's saying, if you understand, he's on because he endorsed Biden, which means officially that's who the UAW endorsed. And he's saying a great majority, not just a majority, a great majority will not vote for Biden because they're worried about their paychecks. And then as you pointed out to me when we played this again in our pre-show meeting, it's like he sort of hesitated because he realized where he was going and then said, well, the person that cares about the worker, he was implying is Biden, who he endorsed, and the one that cares about the big corporations is Trump, but the workers care about, their economy and their paycheck, which is why they endorse Trump and not Biden. He's all over the place.
He stepped in it, and the answer should have been. And I don't know how he doesn't know this.
I know.
Because it's right out of their, a long-term history of the union's position and their support for the left. It's very clear. Well, Neil, I'm not going to get into how our individual members vote. They are free to vote the way that they want to vote. I'm telling you right now that the UAW officially supports President Biden because he's pro-union, and we don't believe that we'll get that support from Trump. He will not support the unions like Biden will. I mean, that you're towing the line. You don't even get into the weeds on the whole thing. Well, a great majority.
And then they got into discussion on EVs. Well, they're different business decisions, and it takes a while to, instead of what the correct thing for any UAW president would be to say, getting involved in electric vehicles was completely the wrong thing to do.
Yep.
And it's killing our union membership.
There's no demand. We can't, because if there's no demand, that means we stop making vehicles, which means we don't have jobs.
Right. And
the lines stop, we go home.
Because remember, they were implying that since the automobile companies got subsidies, they were implying that the union membership should get taxpayer subsidies too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the private sector unions are today in America. Instead of being strong and saying, look, but he's got to toe the leftist philosophy,
right?
Instead of come out and saying, "Look, it's BS."
Yeah.
When you look at everything with climate change, they're destroying the American automobile industry. You know, because the government is by their mandates forcing manufacturers to make a profit that even with taxpayer subsidies they cannot make a profit. And if the companies can't make a profit, I can't make good deals for my union workers. That's what he should have said.
Right.
And even though, you had the automakers concede and give them a ton of money, it means nothing if you're all laid off.
Right.
And the manufacturers know that. Yep. I've got to lay them off. We'll lay them off. Doesn't matter. We can give you $1 billion each. But if we can't do it, you get laid off. And so, but was just all, I mean, I've seen weak performances by union leaders. That's one of the weakest ever I've seen in a media interview.
Great majority.
And there's no passion at all. It's almost as if I just got to ride this fine line here. And he didn't ride it. He didn't do it. He didn't succeed.
Well, I mean, I don't know if he was caught up in the reality of the moment. The reality is very clear. And it could well be the case. I don't know inside, the ranks of the union members. I don't know, but it could well be the case right now that it is very loud, that a great majority are going to vote for Trump. Because from a union standpoint, they look at it and go, hey, we want the guy that's going to bring the economy back. We want the guy that's going to kill the EV thing. We want the guy that's going to give us long-term job security.
Well, when he said that the UAW worker is voting for their paycheck, but and their own self-interest and their paycheck, and then you could tell I think he at that moment he goes, oh God, where do I go here? And then he says, he doesn't give the specific names. He goes, and we know one of the candidates, absolutely supports the worker, and the other one supports basically the rich corporations.
Right.
It's like, well, your union workers don't believe that. You just made it clear they care about their paycheck. Are you saying that they're wrong?
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, that would have been the right there. I would have stopped the conversation and said, "Oh, wait, great majority." How does the union leadership not represent its members?
Right.
How do you? You're saying you're going against a great majority?
Yeah. Since when does a union president go against the great majority of the workers that he represents when you have admitted they care about their paycheck and making more money?
You're talking about Biden being pro-union. You're not. And you're the union president.
And then I would bring up the example. I go, well, let's talk about Biden and the Keystone Pipeline. That's what I'd bring up.
Go learn to code.
Right. Every thousands of union jobs lost for nothing by the Democrat standard that you support because they got into it earlier where he was like, oh, I'm an environmentalist. Mm-hmm. Well, fine.
Oh, let's get into that.
Biden killed tens of thousands of Keystone Pipeline union jobs, and then every member of his cabinet that was asked, Department of Energy, Department of Transportation, and even the climate change czar said what the president was doing was the wrong thing to do based on your philosophy. So for no reason, he got rid of tens of thousands of jobs, and you're endorsing him?
Right.
And your workers aren't because you claim your workers care about their pay? You're making no sense, and you're the president of the damn union.
It's unbelievable, the lack of self-awareness in that moment.
All right, I got to stop this here because they're getting me all flustered where I'm using the D word too much.
I don't give a damn. It's the reality that we're in right now where because that's what was happening.
Nobody that's in power anymore ever has to explain themselves. They just throw out sentences and words. It's like, oh, okay, well, thank you so much for the interview.
I
tear him to shreds.
I almost was waiting for him to go, oh, wait, are we on the air? What I meant to say is no one is voting for Trump. You could hear it. He walked into the wrong bathroom and then realized it at the last moment. Oh crap. I mean, we're going to vote for Biden.
Hold it. There is no wrong bathroom.
No, yeah, there is. And you know it when you walk in it. Man, the looks you get. And then by the time you're washing your hands.
That's just your bigotry.
And then by the time you're washing your hands, I mean mean remarks. Mean people. With this whole get out of here thing. But this is exactly what happened. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize what I was saying. What I meant to say was Biden.
I mean, just horrible.
Men and women, and then the benefits.
It was so bad. It was so bad when I saw the entire interview. It was so bad that a person who I have been extremely blunt and criticized severely, where a friend of his had to call our show and defend him.
Mm-hmm.
But I've criticized him so severely and so bluntly and so passionately. He was so bad, I felt a little sorry for him. So I'm like, dude, you're digging the biggest hole in the world. Because
you're waiting at the end of that. You're waiting for him to say, we have supported Democrats for years, and we can no longer do that. We're supporting Trump.
Because if I'm a union member, I'm saying to myself, he needs to be fired now.
He just said, we are not representing our union members.
Yeah, exactly. That's what he could
on television. He said it. We're not going to represent our union members. That's the direct translation. You don't have to read between any lines. He said it. A great majority of members will be voting for Trump. We're not going to do that. We're not going to represent the great majority of our members. Sean Fain.
I'm sorry. I mean, it's. I'm passionately against what he's doing, but there is humor in it because he was so bad.
Is everyone smoking weed?
Is everybody high? Maybe that's what it is with with interviewers not being as blunt as we would like them. You know, I got
the lack of self-awareness.
I got compliments for the debate that we had yesterday with the caller when we were talking about the Trump and a guy called and said that the royalties of oil could pay off the debt, and I said no, and we started getting into it, and then the guy started misrepresenting what I was saying to him, and so I got a little heated with him, and then cut him off, explained it, but then we eventually agreed. And got a lot of compliments on it, but I got another guy that was just furious. It's unprofessional that you get angry at all. No, it's not. Somebody misrepresents me, I'll get angry and I'll get blunt.
Yeah, don't put words in my mouth.
Right, don't put words in my and it's like if you
don't tell me what I know and don't know.
Yeah, and exactly, and that's what he was doing, and so and he kept talking, which is why I got a little angry, and it's like this is so unprofessional. Well, and this guy was like, you better stop criticizing Trump. No, you're just afraid of the truth. If you wish to practice political idolatry, if you wish to abide by lies, now we have defended Trump on a ton of things today, but we'll criticize him when he's BSing you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wish to be BS'd and you wish to enable lies, whether you're on the right or left, go ahead. We're not a part of it.
And if he's the nominee on November 5th, I'll vote for him.
Yeah, we've already stated that.
And I will also
criticize him when he's
January
BSing
21st of next year. If he does something that I disagree with, I'll criticize him.
And if you're going to criticize me for being unprofessional, for getting angry, maybe you better look at the person you're supporting for president if you're talking about pure professionalism in your presentation.
Yep.
Bring it on. The arguments are weak. And I think the arguments are weak from so many people because of what we just saw there. Nobody has to explain themselves, and nobody will hold them accountable. And on the Republican side and on the Democrat side, you have too many people kissing posteriors and wanting to be a part of it in the media instead of calling it as it is and telling people the truth. We're acting like a bunch of children. Now politicians have become Taylor Swift. We're all Swifties. Ooh, I love my candidate. He can do no wrong. Well, I better not ask this question because it might get people upset who wants to practice political idolatry. Grow the hell up.
Yeah, exactly.
We're adults. We're not children. These aren't rock stars, for God's sakes.
Cavuto had Sean Fain right there live in a moment that I haven't heard any union leader say anything close to.
And you could have destroyed him.
Oh.
Could have destroyed him.
Oh,
He didn't.
man.
He didn't.
You didn't do it.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. Roadside inspections all begin with the driver interview, during which the officer will gather basic information from the driver and prepare the driver for the inspection. The officer will also be evaluating the driver, determining if the driver can speak English, is under the influence of anything, has an illness, or is fatigued. The officer will ask the driver for required documents, including vehicle and driver credentials, the driver's log, and shipment paperwork. The officer may also conduct a vehicle inspection. Before beginning the inspection, the officer will take steps to make sure the inspection can be done safely. These include chalking the wheels, wearing personal protective equipment, and explaining what will be required of the driver. The driver needs to pay close attention to these instructions so that the vehicle inspection can be conducted in a manner that is safe for the inspection official. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up following the bottom of the hour, liberal host tells Democrats are not doing things right. And more coming up.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you want. If you can't listen live overnight, to one of our great radio station affiliates that carry us. So, Seth Meyers, who is as liberal as you can be, have blasted the Biden campaign's new merchandise. Okay? And what he says is their slogan, which is not a slogan. Here's a little bit of that.
The campaign released a new line of merchandise last night with the slogan, "Together we will defeat Donald Trump again." Democrats, why? Why are you so bad at this stuff? That is not a slogan. That's like an affirmation you tape on your bathroom mirror. Slogans don't have multiple punctuation marks in them. A slogan is like, "Let's go," or "Vote or die." This is a sentence so awkward that you think, oh, it must spell out a cool acronym, and then it doesn't. Unless is a cool acronym. Also, you can't end your slogan with again when his slogan ends with again. Democrats, I'm begging you, please suck less. Oh.
Ouch.
That's actually funny.
Well, I mean, they really don't have anything to do to promote. It's about selling the fear of Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what your slogan would be in that case.
Please suck less.
It would be.
We're going to suck.
We're
the Democrats. We're going to suck less.
Well, but remember the whole vote or die thing?
Yeah.
Remember that? Okay. And we were like,
nobody died.
I don't know that anyone died as a result of not voting. I can't be 100%.
There were no,
because I don't read every newspaper.
There were no news reports that we remember.
I saw no reports of that. But I don't know. No more Trump? If that's the way you're going, just
I mean, that would be
no more Trump.
Yeah. Trump, bad.
Which would be two separate words, not even one. Trump, period, bad, period.
Right, exactly.
Talking like a caveman. It's not that hard. But I guess it is.
Yeah, it is.
The No Malarkey Tour Part 2.
A federal judge in Canada ruled that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's use of the Emergencies Act to crack down on the anti-COVID lockdown protesters known as Freedom Convoy was unconstitutional. This story from National Review. The Emergencies Act grants the federal government additional powers during moments when Canadian national security is deemed to be endangered, which, by the way, it never was.
It was not.
In February of 2022, it was deployed by the Trudeau government to prevent demonstrations against COVID-19 lockdowns and vaccine mandates across Parliament Hill and downtown Ottawa. It also empowered local law enforcement to remove protesters, tow vehicles, and even freeze the bank accounts of convoy participants. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I have concluded, this is what the federal court justice Richard Mosley wrote in his decision this week in Canada. I have concluded that the decision to issue the Emergencies Act proclamation does not bear the hallmarks of being reasonable, justifiable, transparent, or intelligent, and was not justified. While I agree that the evidence supports the conclusion that the situation was critical and required an urgent resolution by governments, the evidence, in my view, does not support the conclusion that it could not have been effectively dealt with under other laws in Canada. Mosley cited other provincial instances in Alberta, Quebec, and other cities in Ontario where protesters were disbanded without invoking extraordinary measures. For those reasons, I conclude that there was no national emergency justifying the invocation of the Emergencies Act, and the decision to do so was therefore unreasonable and also falls beyond the authority's scope of power. The harm being caused to Canada's economy, trade, and commerce were very real and concerning, but it did not constitute threats or the use of serious violence to persons or property. The judge added, listen to this here. The judge added that he began the case leaning to the view that the decision to invoke the Emergencies Act was reasonable. However, after hearing the counter-arguments presented, Mosley's mind was swayed. Their participation in these proceedings, he added, referring to the two civil rights groups joining the challenge, has demonstrated again the value of public interest litigants, especially in presenting informed legal arguments. This case may have not turned out this way had it not been for their involvement. The case was brought by two Canadians who had their bank accounts frozen for just participating in the demonstrations, as well as the Canadian Constitutional Foundation and the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Emergency is not in the eye of the beholder. Emergency powers are necessary in extreme circumstances, but they are also dangerous to democracy. They should be used sparingly and carefully. They cannot be used even to address a massive and disruptive demonstration if that could have been dealt with through regular policing and laws. So there you go. Wow.
Well, you know, from the very beginning, we were breaking down the response to that, and it just kept getting worse. Trudeau's response was so horrible, just even before we get into the constitutional argument or the legal argument about it, the political argument about it. And we gave examples of, look, this protest is massive. You're not talking about a small group of individuals. And it's gaining steam by those who weren't even involved in the trucking industry. It grew to be massive. It was far bigger even than the Canadian borders.
Well, we know because it didn't matter whether COVID was in Canada or COVID was in the United States. The protesters, and it grew to be so big because the protesters ended up being right.
Yeah. And you looked at that,
the mandates were wrong.
Right. And you looked at that and people fighting for their livelihoods. And in the face of that, the arrogance and defiance that came out of Trudeau over and over again. And it just kept getting worse. And I thought, okay. And I saw an article recently, the fall of Trudeau, who was once the Liberals in Canada, I think liberals globally, remember, had put him on a pedestal.
Wasn't he like the Obama of
he was
Canadian
Canada's
Prime Minister?
Obama. And now his popularity is in the toilet. But it's because of his actions. It's because of his actions. And you look at that trucker protest, and there was no way it wasn't going to grow at that point because those protesters who were at the heart of it had no other option. They couldn't back down. It was going to be the end of their livelihood. And when you saw that, there should have been a much different response. Listen, I want to sit down with the protesters. We talked about it. I want to sit down with the protesters. Want to have some conversations about their concerns. We're trying to do the right thing, blah, 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 blah. But it was handled much differently.
Well, what I loved is to see the story, Justin Trudeau preparing for the possibility of a Trump presidency. And, the entire thing about, protecting democracy and being against fascism. Right. And then it's like he's saying this a couple days after this ruling came out from the federal judge. Well, who is, if you're talking about fascist or you're talking about authoritarian, we'll use the term authoritarian that they use against Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Did Trump ever do anything that was as authoritarian as Trudeau did there?
No.
Never.
No. Not even close.
Not even close. No.
And I saw the one of the headlines, too, yesterday. World leaders are preparing because with Trump's momentum, world leaders are preparing for the return of Trump. You mean the same world leaders, our allies, that lost all confidence in the U.S. after the botched exit of Afghanistan under Biden? You mean those? You mean our allies who have lost all confidence in us? You mean our enemies who don't fear us? In fact, just the opposite? You mean those world leaders? Yeah, you should be prepared for somebody who's going to be stronger. You should be. One word to the Iranians. Soleimani. Any questions? You should be prepared for a president with a backbone. And frankly, anybody aside from Biden, many on the right would have had a stronger backbone than Biden. But Trump has the history.
Yeah, we said, and we, when that happened, you and I remember, because remember that he was, the story was from sources that the military, the attack, on, Iranian particular points was going, and then Trump pulled back.
Right.
And the question was, is Trump showing the weakness by that? If that story was true, was Trump showing weakness to the Iranians, and all of a sudden Soleimani got killed, and everything changed at that point.
It all went quiet.
And Trump did send the message: we're not going to sit there and you hit us and we hit you. We'll kill your leaders.
Yep. We'll take out the ones that are responsible, directly responsible.
And that is a different message from the United States. It's like, we're not going to kill thousands of people. We're not going to go back and you hit us, we hit you, because you see now where that's going right now. You see the expansion. Who was it? I'll find the story here, but there was a story out yesterday saying Biden denies that we're at war in any way, as he starts invoking and justifying what he's doing through the War Powers Act,
right?
Which is about war,
right?
It's like, you can't do that,
right?
And it's just like, wow.
And then fighting to open our borders so we can secure Ukraine's borders.
Yeah,
that's who Biden is.
I know.
So to those in the media, yeah, I bet world leaders are preparing for the return of Trump.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. So, yeah, I mean, there is some sanity in Canada. Not a lot, but there is some.
Well, I think it's interesting, the judge saying that at the beginning he was leaning toward that whole thing being justified, and then heard the arguments. And I'm glad it happened that way. I mean, well, I would rather have a judge that would see it going in, but at the very least, you had a judge that was willing to listen to the arguments. Because far too often, and we know it's Canada, but far too often, you see that where they believe it's their job to change the rules from the bench. And they're not going to be persuaded. And that's not exclusive to the U.S.
No.
And so, that finding here is, I think, monumental. It's unfortunate that it took this long. It's unfortunate that it had to go down the way it did. But the fight was worthy.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.